Good morning, everybody. How are you? I hope you all had a great weekend. I did. It rained a bunch last night, so you can hear the water. I love that sound. It's awesome. I'm out here early before it gets too warm. It's nice out though. It's always good to come back here and relax. Today I wanted to talk about self-doubt, and I kind of wrote it as like a confession for me, in that, you know, even when you think about self-doubt, like for me personally, I'm going to tell a story, but while I tell it, I want you to think about some scenarios in your life, maybe even currently, where you're having some self-doubt and how these concepts apply to you, and even the story might. And I thought about this last Wednesday. Somebody made a comment to me, and they came from a place of wanting to be helpful, you know, so it wasn't the person's fault that it kind of struck me a little bit. But the person basically said, "Hey Brian, you have great content, but nobody's watching." You know? And I think the idea, the spirit of it was, let me maybe help you if you want your YouTube channel to grow, basically. But inside my brain, it started making me think, oh, you know, people aren't watching, you know, and then that self-doubt starts to creep in. And, you know, for me personally, like, this is something completely new to me. I'm not a public speaker. And there is a little bit of, like, kind of vulnerability and self-doubt inherent in what I'm doing, because this isn't like me. If I told my friends and family that I was doing this, they'd be like, "Brian, you're out of your mind," you know what? And so that's kind of the key with the self-doubt, is like we already have thoughts and doubts in our brains, and when it kind of pops up somewhere else, or someone says something or something happens, and it's so easy for those tapes to get kind of triggered, and we start going down that path of self-doubt, and that's how it kind of grows. You know, I don't know if people ever listen to Louise Hay now. She was a kind of self-help person back in the day. She was really awesome. I read her books and stuff, and one thing she talked about, she's like, don't be upset about someone pushing your buttons, because you're the one who created the buttons for them to push, you know. And so it's kind of like we create those things, those programs and those tapes are already inside our head. So that voice that says, oh, this person's right, no one's watching, look, you know, it reinforces something that's already there, maybe like an old wound inside of our brain that we thought was healed and maybe isn't. And they just kind of touch like a bruise, you know, they touch it and it hurts. The bruise doesn't hurt until you touch it, you know. And so it kind of touched me in a way that kind of started, I started having a little bit of self-doubt, and you know, and so you have to kind of like, how do you get over that? And I think one of the best things that has always worked for me is to journal and write down those thoughts. Because when we have that self-doubt, it's almost like we're in a, like one of those, what do they call it? The like at the circus, or not, no, the well, what are they called? Carnival. You know, when you go in like the Hall of Mirrors, you know, and your vision and your image is distorted. So when that self-doubt comes in, everything starts to get distorted, and your brain has that initial thought. For me, it was like, oh, nobody's watching. And then I start thinking about things like, oh, well, I've watched other YouTubers and they've talked about how, oh, you've got to do this, that, and the other, or else the algorithm will get you. And, you know, and I even saw one bit, and this is what happened. So these other thoughts come in and reinforce the negative thought. And I had a thought, I was thinking about, like, I'd watched this video where someone had, like, recorded YouTube videos for like 16 years, and he was like, oh, no one's watching, I give up, you know. And then sometimes I'll find YouTube folks who had channels, and they had really good content, but it was 5 years ago and they stopped making the content, you know, because they felt like it. And so that's the thing, it's like, you know, you have to look at reality, and you have to decide what is going to help you and not, like these thought patterns. So it helps me to journal and write down these thoughts. And then after I write down the thought, to write down evidence. What is supporting this thought? Like I said, maybe watching some other YouTube video where someone was struggling, that means I'm going to struggle. And then what goes against this thought? Brian, it's not true. And in fact, I wanted to say, over the weekend, I got several new subscribers, and I want to thank you all. I really appreciate that. And a lot of people were commenting on my videos, and we got to have conversations that way. And so that meant a lot to me, and it really brightened my day. And that's the thing, another fly. So that's the evidence that I need to focus on. So yeah, writing down that thought that's in our head that may not be true, then writing down the supporting evidence, and then writing down what goes against it. And if it's self-doubt, you'll often find that this thought pattern initially is like some old thought pattern that got triggered in your brain, and then our brains are programmed to think, oh, I'm in danger or something. So our brain starts to look for evidence that this, some people say fear is false evidence appearing real, and so your brain automatically starts looking for evidence to prove that this self-doubt is correct, this doubtful thought. And so when we write it down, we can look at it and say, wait, here's the thought, here's the evidence that might suggest that, but there's so much more evidence that supports the contrary. You know what I mean? So I hope I didn't talk too long. It's an important topic. I like to talk about it, and it was personal to me, again, like relative to this YouTube video, this channel. I didn't start this, it's not like I'm trying to get a whole bunch of folks, but, I want to help people, and I enjoy the idea of creating a community where people can interact with each other, and we can help each other. And so that's my goal. And when someone said that, it kind of triggered me thinking, am I not doing it right? So anyway, I'd love to hear from you all, how you all handle self-doubt. If you would, please leave a comment, let me know. And if you like these kind of things, like and subscribe. It lets YouTube know who to send them to. I appreciate your time today. I hope you all have a great week. And as always, I'm grateful for each and every one of you, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care.